It's easier to build a common project between us. And behind that, we didn't expect that network of SME was structured and help us to reach the international level. So only 2 years after the creation of that little community in South Belgium, we reached hundreds of towns around the world. And we got awards for that. And it's really a good example of, well, a common interest between a network of SME, which developed the middleware, and an open source community of public municipalities who developed a business application. So those two networks, a joint effort, and finished to work worldwide. And then in Belgium, the project also developed inside the country, and it reached actually 150 municipalities in South Belgium. That's more than half the total of local authorities. And so, because we have big players, we had big players in 2006 that were really interested by our project, because the potential of industrialization and common needs for all local authorities was very interested. And so we had the help of the Union of Municipalities, so that's a trust actor for local authorities. And the originality of this project is that we, as I said, work with that network of SME, with an open source foundation, an open source community. And so we transposed all the activities of the open source community, like Unix or OpenOffice, in the public services. So the first step, of course, is to make developer work with each other. And so we use developer techniques like Agile programming and XAMPP programming. But we do the same with employees. So 3 times a month, for example, we organize training sessions so that the user can be in touch with their product as soon as possible. So as you see there, it's employees or politics from the town. Each one has its laptop and must use our products. That's why all our products are running in software services software model, so in the cloud, so that everyone can read the software at the training room, but also, of course, at the work. So we provide most business application for local authorities, website, of course, permitting, land management, city council management, and so on. And those applications, for most of them, are translated into 5 or 6 different languages and are used in South America, for example, or North America. So how we are doing to reuse all those applications? We have 4 levels of reusability. The first one is the tough one, is the business application itself. Each country has, of course, its own legislation, and so it's very difficult to share an application at that level. But it happens. We use in Belgium some open source application from France, and our developers are building this application with French developers. But the common reusability is more towards components, dashboards, security level, and so on. Methodology, how to go to industrialization, automatic installer, and so on. Also quality of code, and the framework, which is Plone. So that's our different approaches. Now, in cost savings, of course, that's very interesting. So that's why we are now part of the politics of the e-government in Belgium. It's cost savings, of course. When you see this application, it's the application who managed the city council. It's also used at the government level, parliament level. It's the same application because the quality of code and industrialization is behind. It's easy to modify the application for all use cases. And so nobody has to finance the whole part of the application, of course. So what's new with this project since the beginning of this year is that, in fact, the government in South Belgium decided to merge this open source community, which was not structured, with some specific structure project in official project from the government. The problem is that we work in the same manner as an open source community do. So we have GPL code, quality. Our code is published online, documentation and so on. It's very, very transparent. And we have also IT specialists, developers inside the community. The problem is in the project from the government, so more like a top-down project, they had not developers, so they were bound to a provider, and it was proprietary solutions. So merging those two projects took us 1.5 years. So now we succeed. The beginning of this year with a new project, which is an official structure, which is called IMIO. And we do both open source and proprietary solutions. And now we are reaching to 2014, 250 towns. What the problem we are facing now is public procurement. And so the problem was when we were not structured and we were working with municipalities, we had to group tender to finance development. It's very, very tough to group tender between 10 or 20 different cities. So this organization now can group tender easily, and each town that is member from IMIO don't need to launch any tender. The organization do it for the municipality. So because the project is always open, the SME could also work directly with a public tender with the town, but can also directly go with IMIO, and because the problem is that town can hardly write the specification of a tender that deals with open source software. So we have some specificities that could not be provided by SME, pooling budget, collaborative activities, transfer of knowledge, dissemination, and e-gov strategy. So it's really interesting to work with that network of SME to reach our goal and have the knowledge of the SME to build our products. Okay, sorry for my English. That's it.
Thank you very much. So, this was the frontal assault. I hope we can turn this a little bit more interactive. Do we already have questions? Otherwise, I warn you, I can keep this panel quite busy. But I prefer to give the audience the first. Yes, Mikia. Do we have a microphone?
So my name is Michiel Leenaert. I work for a charity called NLnet Foundation, and since the panel was something about government getting involved, and I always hear people from the Commission and people from Europe yelling that Europe is not a success. When I look at Google, I look at a European success. It is Linux underneath. When I look at Facebook, it's a European success. It's Linux underneath. The scaling, in Europe, we have a great success in that's running in America. It's called the web. I kind of like those inventions where we give out stuff from a public, and that's what the foundation that I work for actually funds. We fund open source projects that have a big chance to change things. And I would very much like to stop the big investments in 17 billion Siemens, Nokia, whatever projects, because they will all fail because of these exact same reasons, that we have these small agile players that are going to sweep the big iron off their feet. And actually my question to you is, what is the role that you see for non-commercial involvement of Europeans inside this sphere? Because we've been talking about that, but how do you see that mingle with the entrepreneurs?
You want to? I think there's one for you.
Well, I guess I can offer slightly a personal, non-Google perspective from having previously worked, as Joel does, in SMEs, working with open source software, trying to compete with, very big companies who are putting in enormous tenders to government contracts for, give us $1 billion and we'll spend all of this money, and we're trying to come along and persuade them that we could do something better for them for a few $100,000. I think it's happening. I think all of that stuff is happening. I think you're absolutely right to point out that the volunteer contributed open source community has made an enormous contribution to the infrastructure of the web and to the infrastructure of very big global players and other global players also around the world. I think, what is the role? I think it will continue to happen. I think there's a very strong spirit of that sort of public service open source software contribution in Europe. A lot of it is connected with the universities, which I mentioned before, and so continued public funding and support for the universities, I think, is very important in this context. But I expect it to continue to happen, and I expect those sorts of innovations to continue to happen. I do at the same time think that it would be good if, in addition to doing all the work for free, which allows these big American corporations to make billions of dollars, which is very nice, we could also have some more European successes at the billions of dollar levels,